From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. United States President Donald Trump has been talking about his great relationship with the British Prime Minister Theresa May, a day after he made a blistering attack on her plans for Brexit, saying they will kill trade relations between their countries. Trump met May at her country residence on the first full day of his official visit to Britain. Both leaders said they had a lot to talk about. In his earlier interview with a British newspaper, Trump lamented that May hadn't followed his advice on Brexit. To add injury to insult, he praised the recently resigned Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, saying he could be a great Prime Minister, and then he took on London's Mayor Sadiq Khan, saying he is a terrible mayor who has done a very bad job on terrorism by allowing so many migrants to come into the city.
I'm not going to get involved in a ding-dong with President Trump about his views of me. I don't think the rise in crime is because of immigration from North Africa or anywhere else. That's for President Trump to explain why he thinks there's a link between immigration to Europe and the rise in crime in our country and in other parts of Europe as well.
British citizens have mobilized against Trump by organizing mass protests in at least 25 cities across the country. Tens of thousands of people are taking part in the demonstrations, with the largest one happening in London. A giant blimp representing Trump in diapers has been drawing a lot of attention.
I think it's brilliant. I think it's an epitome of British humour, really, and I think Trump doesn't get that. But I think it stands for the way that we deal with things we don't like. British values is everything about decency, and Trump just isn't a decent man. He's not a decent leader, and it's good to let him know that.
Now to Colombia, where 32 former FARC leaders will appear in front of the Special Jurisdiction for Peace Court, or JEP, later on Friday. The FARC members are accused of kidnapping. Among those summoned are Rodrigo Londoño, Pablo Catatumbo, Iván Márquez, and Jesus Santrich. This first hearing will serve to provide the armed group members and their lawyers with the information that links them to the alleged illegal detentions, so that they may decide whether to plead guilty or not guilty at a later hearing. The leaders of a former guerrilla could face sentences of up to 8 years if they plead guilty, but this could turn into a 20-year sentence if they plead not guilty and are found to be responsible for the crimes. Former FARC combatant Pablo Catatumbo spoke about the coming legal process he will face. On Twitter, he said the armed group is committed to the truth, to the victims and to the victims of the conflict. He added national reconciliation can only be achieved if the people who participated in the conflict accept their responsibility. Colombia's top prosecutor has rejected criticisms by the outgoing president Juan Manuel Santos that they weren't doing enough to prevent the murders of social leaders. The United Nations says more than 100 local community and political leaders have been killed this year.
Last Tuesday, after meeting with the National Commission for Security Guarantees, President Santos reprimanded the Ombudsman's office during an announcement about the prevention of social leaders' murders.
We've received 42 alerts so far. 34 received a response by this body. We need to improve our early alert system, and we need the Ombudsman Office to be more rigorous so that the reaction of the security forces can be more effective.
The Ombudsman's office stated that the work of his team is strict and uses the help of communities.
The members of the National Commission for Security Guarantees know that the Ombudsman and his office take to the streets. They go into towns, to Trujillo and Dobio. So if they can't attend a meeting, it's because they are visiting communities where they are needed.
Prosecutor Fernando Carrillo insisted on listening to communities and strengthening the collective protection, with vigils for indigenous, campesino, and cimarrona people.
We call for an audit session next Monday in Santander of Quilichao. We call all national, departmental, and municipal agencies for a meeting with social organizations. What we like is dialogue with all of them to understand their security needs.
After years of reports by social organizations, the prosecutor confirms that murders of social leaders were systematic.
What looked like blasphemy in the past is now very clear, especially in the case of the land defenders. There are land holders who are murdering leaders for their land. I can tell you, according to the prosecutor's office study, that there is a system in place to commit these murders.
The disagreement between the prosecutor's office and the ombudsman's office with the national government are not new when it comes to the protection of social leaders.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will meet with Mexican President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador on Friday, hoping to make early strides on divisive issues like immigration, trade, and security. Pompeo will lead a high-level delegation made up of Jared Kushner, senior advisor and son-in-law to U.S. President Donald Trump, Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen, and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. The delegation will also meet with Mexico's current president, Enrique Peña Nieto, and Foreign Minister Luis Videgaray to discuss the transition of power. Meanwhile, social movements are hoping to meet with López Obrador to discuss their needs ahead of his inauguration on December 1st.
Representatives of the Community Front in Defense of Land are gathering outside AMLO's campaign headquarters. They say their lands were given away for political interests due to a decree by a previous administration.
The People's Front have been saying that the presidential decree, written by Vicente Fox, was going to be the cause of much damage and destruction.
They say they're worried about the project for the new airport in Mexico. The project has been discussed by various businessmen with López Obrador. The inhabitants of Mexico Valley want to be heard as well.
Before making any decision, it is important that AMLO listens to the voice of the people. We are opposed to the construction of a new airport, not to the government of López Obrador.
Ever since July 2nd, the day after the election, people gather outside AMLO's campaign headquarters waiting to meet him.
I come here because I don't have a job and I need one. I have come to see if he can give me a hand.
For historian Lorenzo Meyer, all this is an example of the social and political capital that supports AMLO.
Andrés Manuel will have to organize his power and work with the powerful elites. It makes no sense to destroy them. He must have them under control.
After elections, López Obrador has met with representatives of social sectors and businessmen. He will also meet with representatives of the U.S. government as part of a presidential transition period that is described as the most complex in history.
Opposition members marched in Nicaragua to protest the government of Daniel Ortega before a general strike starts on Friday. Demonstrators waved the national flag as they asked for the end of violence and peace to be restored in the country. The opposition, led by the Civic Alliance for Justice and Democracy, will also take to the streets on Friday, a march that is expected to cover 5 kilometers from the east to the southwest of capital city Managua. Ortega's government has also announced its own demonstration for the same day from Managua to the city of Masaya to remember the 1979 Sandinista revolution. Meanwhile, authorities confirmed the murder of 4 policemen during protests in the department of Rio San Juan and Chontales on Wednesday night. They also reported the kidnapping of 9 others and the death of a school teacher. The murdered officers were identified as Luis Emilio Bustos López, Marlon José Requene López, Lenín Ernesto Olivas Alanís, and Faustino Telles Vargas. In an official statement, the police condemned the murders and kidnappings. They said their members are committed to work towards peace and to assure the safety of all in Nicaragua. At least 241 people have died during the protests that have shook the country since April, according to figures by the Truth, Justice and Peace Commission. And on that story, let's go to our correspondent, María José Díaz, with the latest.
During an opposition march on Thursday in Morrito, attacks by protesters left 4 people dead and 4 people badly injured. Among the dead is the police chief of Morrito, Commissioner Luis Bustos. There are reports that some policemen were captured and taken away, and that the strategy for the attack included using women and children as a cover in order to attack the police headquarters as the march moved past it. These violent groups also attacked the mayor's office. We're still awaiting further comments from the National Police.
We'll take a short break now, but join us again after a video from our multimedia team.
I think it's fine. I mean, I think they like me a lot in the UK.
Welcome back. Let's return to the story on the protests against US President Donald Trump in the UK. We are now joined on the phone live from the protest in London by Mohammed Atiq from the Stop Trump coalition. Hello, Mohammed. Can you give us a sense of how people are feeling about Trump being in the UK?
Hello, and I think, people and protesters here, they are very happy and they're having fun in a lovely sunny day in London to protest against Trump and against his policies. People are sending a clear message here to the whole world, but most importantly to Trump and Trump's administration, that his policies of bigotry, of hatred, of racism, Islamophobia are not accepted in the streets of London, are not accepted everywhere in the world. So that's our clear message to Trump, and we're saying we are all against Trump and Trumpism.
We've seen the constant attacks by Trump to Prime Minister Theresa May and to the London Mayor Sadiq Khan, accusing him of welcoming migrants. What is the response of Londoners?
Well, that's why, we are seeing here actually in the protest, first-time protesters. They have never protested in their life, and they are coming here to protest. Not necessarily, some of them not necessarily protesting against Trump himself, but definitely against his intervention in the domestic politics of Britain. This is not acceptable from any leader to intervene in the domestic politics of another country, and that's what we're seeing, when he said that Boris Johnson should be a prime minister, or that Brexit is not moving forward, or attacking Sadiq Khan. This is not acceptable at all, and the people in the UK are refusing this completely, and that's why we're seeing really huge numbers. They are coming to Trafalgar Square in the middle of London.
And can we expect any more protests around the country?
Yes, actually, we're not doing a protest only. We are doing something called Carnival of Resistance. So there are different blocks, different organizations, not only in London, but also in different cities in the UK, in Cardiff, in Manchester, in Edinburgh, Leeds. All of these cities, they are doing different protests. And also, we have seen today morning the baby flames of Trump flying over Westminster.
And to end up, can you give us an overview of how many people are there? What is their mood, the chants that they're saying?
I would say right now we have a few thousand, but because it's still a working day and people haven't finished their work, but we're expecting definitely and hopefully more than 100,000 people to be at Trafalgar Square. Actually, the numbers might be even way larger, but we're just putting the minimum for now. And the chance that people are saying, so we have different blocks. We have a block of immigrants, a block of refugees, a block of women's rights, a block of climate change. So mainly all the people that Trump attacked. And these people have different calls. So some of them are calling for that a misogynist person like Trump shouldn't be here, to end the immigration policies that Trump is representing. I've seen some of the, actually right now, I can see someone raising something called climate disaster, a Trump climate disaster. Another one, so all of these chants and placards in front of me. We have mock Trump. We have where there are a place for many voices, there is hope. So really different chants from different people coming from different parts of life.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, for your time. We're speaking to Mohammed Atik from London at the Stop Trump Coalition and the protests against his visit. Let's go to another story. Former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva was acquitted for one of his sentences. A judge decided there wasn't enough proof to keep up the conviction. And now Lula's lawyers are hopeful this will apply in other cases.
Very good news for Lula's supporters. Today he was acquitted of one of his sentences for obstruction of justice. A federal judge considered that the case was solely based on the deposition of a couple of whistleblowers and that wasn't enough proof to back up the case. This is the first time Lula is acquitted of one of his sentences, but he is still a defendant on 5 other corruption cases. This afternoon his lawyers reacted. They said that they agree with the judge's decision and that they hope that the same happens in Lula's other cases, that the judges realize that there aren't enough proof. That's the opinion of Lula's lawyers. And as this case progresses and as we come close to the elections, we see more efforts to try and keep Lula out of jail. Just today, a judge received an impressive number of 140 requests to free Lula, and that's in just one day. Also today, Lula was banned by a judge to talk to the press, and that has concerned a lot of people here in Brazil, including his lawyers, who say they are going to appeal on that decision. This is all from us, but we will keep you updated every time we can.
That was Mia Alberti from Sao Paulo. In Ecuador, President Lenín Moreno wants the Union of South American Nations, UNASUR, to return its building to the Ecuadorian government. Critics see this move as an attempt to destroy regional integration.
Ecuador's President Lenín Moreno asked to the Union of South American Nations to hand over the regional headquarters building. Located north of Quito, Moreno expressed that he isn't opposed to integration, but it's absurd that a building that costs millions of dollars has no usefulness.
While the building is on Ecuadorian territory, that does not mean that it doesn't belong to an international body. The building belongs to UNASUR, and Moreno needs the approval of all the member countries to use that building, and as long as that doesn't happen, he would only be attacking the institution.
Current Ecuador's president also proposed to use the space for a new intercultural University of Nationalities. Moreno's decision has been praised by the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador as a way to restore the culture and language of indigenous people, but other organizations have rejected the announcement.
By handing this building over to the indigenous movement, Moreno is destroying an integration tool of UNASUR, and he is making the indigenous movement a part of the United States geopolitical strategy.
One of the main goals of UNASUR was to strengthen political dialogue between member states in order to reinforce the South American integration and the participation of UNASUR in the international arena.
UNASUR was created over the last decade as a tool for our survival in a globalized world, which has always hindered our growth and our development.
In addition, this year, 6 countries suspended their memberships. As Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Paraguay, and Peru, they argued that significant differences were found between members and that it is uncertain if the bloc's future will continue. The regional project was championed by progressive leaders such as former Venezuela President Hugo Chavez and former Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa. Denise Herrera, Telesur Quito, Ecuador.
Bolivian President Evo Morales met with Paraguay's President-elect Mario Abdo Benítez in La Paz. The leaders aim to strengthen cooperation and to help enhance the economies of the two countries. Evo Morales highlighted the importance of continuing to promote the development of the region. Morales and Benítez also addressed regional integration.
We have made a small evaluation about integration processes such as UNASUR and CELAC. I am very sorry to tell you that UNASUR is in crisis. We coincided on how to strengthen it. Personally, I envy the integration of some continents such as Europe, Africa, Asia, and we have to have capacity to advance in these systems of integration. We have taken important steps, and we will talk with our brother presidents of South America, Latin America, and the Caribbean to continue strengthening these integration organizations in our region.
I committed myself to making the corresponding arrangements and to make the predisposition so that very soon, Bolivia is soon a full member of Mercosur, and thus strengthen, even more, the potential that we have as the alliance of a region, which has enormous potential in the world.
High-profile Chilean priest Oscar Muñoz was detained on Thursday. He's accused of sexual abuse against 7 minors in a new episode of pedophilia scandals shaking the country's church. Muñoz allegedly committed these crimes back in 2002 in capital city Santiago and also in Rancagua, according to prosecutor Emiliano Arias. The priest occupied a high position in Chile's archbishopric, but he was removed 2 months ago after he admitted to having abused a minor just a few days before Pope Francis arrived to the country. Muñoz will be taken to Rancagua on Friday to be put on trial. The police have created a report system to receive new sexual abuse complaints.
The crimes for which this priest is going to be judged are crimes that still apply. There's no statute of limitations, so penal responsibility is absolute. These are crimes of sexual abuse, and there's also a case of statutory rape.
We'll take one last short break, but join us after a video from our multimedia team. Thanks for joining us again. Activists in Hong Kong have organized a public memorial marking 1 year since the death of China's first Nobel laureate, Liu Xiaobo. Xiaobo died from liver cancer while serving an 11-year sentence for subversion in China. He was arrested in 2008 after co-authoring Charter 08, an online petition that called for political reform in the country. The commemorations come 3 days after the government lifted his widow Liu Xia's 8-year house arrest sentence in Beijing. A suicide bomber targeted a national Awami Party campaign event in Peshawar, Pakistan, ahead of the election, killing its leader Harun Bilur. 20 activists were also killed, along with dozens of others who were injured. The Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack. The party supports a secular government as opposed to being ruled by Islamic law, turning them into a target for the Taliban. Harun's father, Bashir Bilur, was also murdered by a suicide bomber in 2012. The party has vowed to keep fighting for democracy. And with that, we come to the end of this news brief. But there's another stories, as you know, you can find on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And be sure to also follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.
Our actions have an impact on the environment.